God isn't interested in technology. He cares nothing for the microchip or the silicon revolution. Look how he spends his time. 43 species of parrots. Nipples for men.
Slugs.
Slugs. He created slugs. They can't hear. They can't speak. They can't operate machinery. They definitely can't listen to this episode of the Retro Rewind podcast.
Reflux capacitor. Fluxing. Crew to stations. Scanning for Time Bandits. 1981. Prepare to rewind in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, rewinders and new listeners, to the Retro Rewind podcast, where we take a fresh look at movies and games from 15 or more years ago. I am your captain of the pod, Francisco Ruiz, and I'm joined by your XO and mine, Paul, the Master Interrupter Powers.
Hey, this episode is free, right?
Of course, always. Why?
The poor are going to be absolutely thrilled. Have you met them at all? The poor? The poor? Oh, you must meet them. I just know you'll like them. Charming people. Of course, they haven't got 2 pennies to rub together, but then that's because they're poor.
Also, for this discussion of the film Time Bandits, we welcome back aboard Entertainment Officer Chris Cowan. Welcome back, Chris.
Hey, great to be here. This is awesome.
Awesome. Great to have you here. Now that you have a quick flyby of who we are, Paul, can you give us a quick overview of the production specs for Time Bandits?
Yes, Time Bandits was released July 16th, 1981 in the UK.
Ooh.
I guess that's short for Ukrainia, right?
That's short for the United Kingdom, Paul.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
It runs 1 hour and 50 minutes, is rated PG, and is directed by Terry Gilliam of Francisco's favorite Monty Python
Do we
fame.
have to bring that up?
It was written by Michael Palin, and guess what, Francisco? Also Terry Gilliam.
Good for the Gilliam.
Okay, good. And some stars in this that you may recognize include Sean Connery, Shelley Duvall, and John Cleese, who's also of Monty Python fame. The music was composed by Mike Moran, not Moron. Sorry, Mike.
Wow.
All right, you ready for the box office trivia game?
I'm ready. Chris, are you ready?
I was born ready.
Well, of course. And then chat, feel free to join in. Paul, go ahead.
All right, Time Bandits was made for about $5 million and earned around $40 million at the box office.
Wow.
Well done.
Given this and the fact that it was released theatrically in 1981, how high in the box office do you think it ranks among the other movies of 1981? We'll do top 50.
Okay, and actually, now that I realize it, I think I looked on the IMDb and saw what it ended up being, so I'm going to have to recuse myself. But
Oh, you cheater.
I wasn't trying, I was just looking for trivia and it came up. So, Chris, what is your guess?
1 through
Oof.
50.
Yeah, 1 through 50.
1 through 50.
For 1981.
For 1981.
Made 40 million.
Yeah, 40 million was pretty decent back then, I feel
Yeah.
like.
It was.
I gotta say, like, I don't know, maybe in the 20s to 30s. I'm gonna go with 30.
30?
30,
Okay.
right on the dot.
Awesome. We have 42 from Bobo, of course. We have 20 from Neko. And 25 from Diaperman, 25 Coconut specifically. Ashley says 26. John says 36. Star Fox says 22. Paul, I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna tell you what the IMDb told me, and you tell me if it's right. Okay. So according to IMDb, it placed 10th in 1981.
Ooh, sorry. According to the numbers.com, it came in at 16.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
16. All right.
Now this is for worldwide and not inflated and all that. So I don't know if the numbers change on that.
So I think that makes Star Fox the Neko is the closest with 20. Good job, Neko. Well done, well done. You will get your prize package of air sent your way soon. I don't know. Air. Exactly. Some Perry air from Spaceballs. Thank you for those factoids, Paul. And let's see if any of them factor into our memory mind meld or subsequent roundtable discussion, which we'll get into once Alice has located our target film.
Alert. Approaching target. Spoilers incoming. Establishing analysis vector.
America is exploding with laughter from Time Bandits. Newsweek calls it a fantastical comedy.
Hello, I'm Hood.
Flat out hilarious. Us Magazine calls Time Bandits incredibly spectacular. The Wizard of Oz of the 80s. The New York Times says the special effects in Time Bandits are marvelous. The Los Angeles Times says it's one of the great fantasy adventure films.
Thank you very much. Very, very, very much.
Time Bandits, rated PG, now playing at a theater near you.
Yeah, now playing at a theater near you. It's one of the great comedies. Or was it? Let's see what we remember about Time Bandits in our memory mind meld synopsis. Boy gets abducted by a bunch of little bandits who are chased through time by Grandmaster Control Program. The bandits stop a guy on a horse. Then there's a pirate ship or something. Finally, somebody gets buried alive in an oven in a very anticlimactic ending. I'd say that's
right.
almost all correct, but there is definitely some, deception going on. But based on those memories as flawed, so flawed as they were, what rating did they lead you to predict before you rewatched this film? Or for me, in the case of moi, Francisco, this is my first time watching it. What was your prediction of classic, nostalgic, or tragic? Chris, how about you?
I predicted tragic. Honestly, my memory of it was pretty fuzzy, and also kind of mixed in with some memories from Time Cop, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. So the stopping a guy on a horse was that was me, because I was remembering the scene from the beginning of Time Cop where like this guy stops these people on a horse, and it's like set in like the Middle Ages. And then he like
kind of close
pulls out a machine gun and just nails down like all of these guys on horses. So that part, kind of infiltrated
I could see that.
my memory a little bit.
For whatever reason, what I remember from Time Cop is when a guy goes back to like before the stock market crash in the 1920s, and then Jean-Claude goes back for that. But that's maybe I'm confusing things with other movies. Regardless.
Okay. So one of the things that I liked about Time Cop.
Yeah, let's just talk about Time Cop.
Let's just talk about Time Cop. Yeah.
How he
I've never
gets up
seen,
on those
actually.
counters in his
Is that where he does the
tidy
splits?
whities, and so he doesn't get electrocuted. That was a cool moment.
Yeah, I don't know. I never saw it.
I don't remember that at all.
Oh, come on. It's like in the commercials for Time Cops, I swear. Anyway, so for Chris, he rated tragic. Predicted tragic, I should say. Paul, what was your prediction?
I saw this. My parents recorded it off of HBO or something like that in the 80s, and I watched it several times because I was about the same age as the boy.
Oh, okay,
trying
cool.
to find some connection, and I did not. And so I did not like it, and so I haven't seen it since the 80s. So I predicted tragic.
All right, tragic for you.
Yeah, I saw it as a teenager in like the 90s, and so it was like me and some friends, and like one of the friends was like, hey, I got this great movie called Time Bandit. And we're like, oh, sweet. This sounds cool. Time Bandit. The name says it all. Yeah. And we like put it on and we watch it and we're like, what the heck was that? What was this? I can't
Jean-Claude Van Damme in here.
Right. Yeah.
Watch Bloodsport next time. For me, not having much familiarity with it, other than like the cover, which I never really understood what I was looking at. But I think this is loved by a good swath of people, and I was always intrigued to watch it. So I predicted nostalgic, again, never having seen it before. It'll be interesting to see if those memories or that those predictions come true, though. I mean, who knows? Maybe after watching this, you guys are completely in a completely different place, or maybe I am. But before we get to our final ratings, we have to get to our
Best three.
The top 3 things we liked about Time Bandits. Chris, let's start with you. What's one thing you enjoyed about this film?
So it had some really fun characters and cameos. And John Cleese's Robin Hood, you kind of stole my thunder there at the beginning with the quote there. Do you enjoy robbing then? Jolly good. Have you met the poor? You'll love the poor. I just loved that was very like Monty Python-esque. And you can definitely see that Monty Python, because it's Terry Gilliam, it's Michael Palin, and it's John Cleese. And so you can see, their influence on this, especially since it was written by two Python veterans.
Yes. Yeah, and I could definitely see that, and things regarding that will probably come out later for me. But Paul, what's something you enjoyed? Did you enjoy the quirky comedy or something else?
Yeah, I'll start off by giving my biggest laugh out loud moment, and it is that Robin Hood scene when the poor start lining up and they just punch. And he punches after they receive their reward, their goal. They just punches them one by one.
It's horrible.
I was laughing so hard, and my wife was just horrified. Like, this is awful. And so she's absolutely right. But I guess it's the slapstick of it, or I don't know what. But that was the funniest part to me. Yeah, it
was so bizarre. It made no sense. It was just
exactly.
Like, is that really necessary? Yeah, exactly. I'm afraid it is.
All right. Carry on.
Yeah, I agree. That was definitely a funny moment for me as well, even though, it is horrific in a lot of ways. But something that I enjoyed was, and we just spoke of how that's a horrible thing, but I actually liked that Kevin, the boy, he seemed to have, he was like, I don't know how you put it. Maybe just the right mix of conscience and innocence. Like he was like trying to get them to not do these things, but he's still going along with it because he is like this innocent character. It's like, well, I got to do this. And I thought he, for what this movie was, I thought he carried the movie well. I was invested in his story and seeing what would become of him, which doesn't make the ending very satisfying, but I liked him as a character.
I don't know. I kind of feel like joining a gang of time-traveling pirates is a little rebellious, Francisco. And I know how you feel about rebellious children.
Yeah, he had to go along. That big face was coming into his bedroom. He didn't know what to make of that.
Yeah,
I thought, why didn't he just
have ways of justifying,
duck under the covers or go to the other side of the room and let him chase the little people.
That's fair.
I feel like there are usually a lot of options, prior to join a gang of time traveling bandits.
That's
I'm just,
fair.
That feels like a last resort to me.
Good. You know what? I can't dispute that. I think you guys are right in line with that. So my bad. Maybe I should change my Tragic Maker now that I think about it. But we're not to that section yet.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I know. I thought it was funny, so I was going with it. See, that's that. I like go with the flow. And
we should definitely explain our approach to this joke.
That makes it so much better.
Why don't you explain your next like to us, Chris, of Time Bandits?
Okay. It had some pretty quotable lines. The whole,
like what?
Nipples for men.
Oh, okay. And, I guess I could see stuff like that being quotable. Yeah.
And then a couple things like, so that's what an invisible barrier looks like. Just kind of little funny one-liners.
Yes, I could see on repeat viewings that those becoming lines that were quotable. None of them really stuck out to me like as ones that I instantly would quote. But yes, I could see that becoming. Yeah.
There's speaking of quotable lines, I saw this as a kid, like I said, and for some reason, this has stuck with me through the years. And when he gets to the point where the evil guy is speaking to one of the little bandits, he's like, I've got an idea. It's like, you've never had an idea in your life or something like that.
Yes.
Every time I think of something, I have that line. It's like, I've got an idea. And I say it with that accent.
That's funny. Wow. Is that what you liked, Paul?
One of the things that I enjoyed about this film is the journey through all these creative worlds and times and seeing recognizable actors. Like at the beginning, I had to rewind it and go back, and I was like, "There's Jim Broden from he's Broadbent or Broad, I don't know, but he's the ringmaster or the main conductor guy from Moulin Rouge. In Harry Potter, he's the guy that turns into the chair, that kind of thing. He's been in a lot of things.
Okay.
But this was like early back in,
Who was he in this?
He was the TV host.
That you see
at the beginning and then at the end where his mom and dad appear. So he was, but there's a lot of recognizable actors. And honestly, it was fun to see the little people. Like, I haven't seen like these guys in years. I used to see him back.
Wasn't one of them R2D2?
Kenny Baker was one of them. He was Fidget.
Yeah.
And
I knew he looked familiar.
The main guy, David Rappaport, the main little guy, I enjoyed the TV series The Wizard back in the 80s that he was the main star of. And
Mr. Wizard?
No, The Wizard.
What was The Wizard about? I don't remember TV. I remember the movie The Wizard, not a TV show.
No, yeah, that's with Fred Savage.
Yeah.
This was, let's see. Oh, they've rechanged IMDb.
They have. It's so annoying now. Oh my gosh.
Where is it? I don't want to pay for pro. Plot. Here we go. Eccentric little person inventor has adventures battling evil around the world. Yeah, but it's. I haven't seen it since the 80s. But he was in several TV shows around that time, and so
I didn't recognize him. But yes, it was cool seeing some of those actors again that I've seen in other. I know I've recognized some of them from Willow. I think I think there is some crossover there.
There wasn't Warwick Davis wasn't in it.
Yes,
No,
I know Warwick
not.
Davis wasn't in it. I think he might have been. Well. Yeah, he was just like 17 in Return of the Jedi, and that was 83. So he might have been still way too young for this.
17, much younger.
Yeah. Anyway, something else I enjoyed was, and I feel like this was completely implausible, so I don't know why this was for me. But I thought when they're in the cages and the way they get from one side to the other with the ropes, I thought that was pretty ingenious. Though I don't think those ropes would hold given how they made it from the rope above them.
The physics were questionable, but it was a fun scene.
Well, exactly.
The realm was questionable, so maybe the physics worked in that realm.
Oh, good point. Good point. But I liked how they did that, how they came up with a solution for that. I thought it was ingenious.
Yeah.
So that's something else I liked. Let's get now into our classic makers, guys. What overcame the physics of your mind to make it your most loved thing? Let's start with Paul first this time.
I thought some of the writing and the dialogue and actually how they portrayed, for lack of better words, Satan or the evil one. I thought they did an excellent job. Just like one of the lines, it says, he says, "What sort of supreme being created such riffraff?" Going off of what you're talking about at the beginning.
In the intro,
Is this not the workings of a complete incompetent? And one of the persons says, "But he created you, O evil one." And he's, "What did you say?" I said, "Well, if he created you, then he can't be entirely." Then he,
explodes.
Says, "Never talk to me like that again. No one created me. I am evil. Evil has existed long before good. I made myself. I cannot be unmade. I am all powerful." And I think that's just something exactly. I can imagine that's exactly how Lucifer would react. Just like so full of pride and so full of arrogance and not making any sense. But
definitely, that speaks to something we were going to talk about in our bonus section of spiritual speculation. I have my mind is based on that.
Nice.
But let's see, he wasn't called Satan in this. I believe
he's called the evil one.
Genius. I saw evil genius.
Or that too.
Okay.
He's just like God, quote unquote, God had a couple names besides Supreme Being.
Exactly. Chris, was there a standout character like the evil genius or the Supreme Being, or Kevin, that made your thing you loved most, or was it some other aspect of this film?
I think that there was a lot of like imagination to it.
Totally.
And I think, you know, especially like if I like revert back to childhood, which comes naturally for me, I think I can definitely like see appreciating just kind of the going along for the ride and like, oh, you know, no, we're now in this time period, and like that's a ship, and now it's someone's hat.
Yeah,
sure. We'll look
different adventures they have. And the creative trail it follows.
I feel like for a kid, you know, it's probably the closest you're going to get to an acid trip for at least a few years, and so I think
hopefully,
definitely, you know, very some fun to be had there.
Yes, yeah. It seemed Gulliver's Travels-esque to me in that way. That was just different scenarios and different adventures based on where you were.
Yeah.
The thing I loved most about it wasn't the adventure of it, but it was more related to what Paul said. I thought David Warner as the evil genius was just spectacular. I loved how he hammed it up, and the lines he said, what lines were written for him, definitely felt like things Satan would say, and I just really appreciated this portrayal. I was when at first I didn't know what to expect with this film. I didn't know it was going to be a Satan and God type dynamic in this. So when that started up, like I was watching this with my kids, and so I'm it's interesting where this is going to go. But I thought by the end it was a fine resolution. It was Hollywood theology, but it wasn't like horrible theology, I guess I'll say. It wasn't like completely like way off and we're all just follow your heart, and you know everyone just needs to find their truth and all that.
True to your heart, you must be true to your heart.
Where's that from?
Mulan.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's my classic maker for Time Bandits. I also love the part where the bad guy touches himself in the future and then they disintegrate. Oh wait, that's Time Cop. But
that's Time Cop.
But you know what? Actually, being serious,
have we reviewed Time Cop yet?
No,
we need to review Time Cop. Oh my gosh! Sign me up for that one because I've got an axe to grind.
You know what? Let's forget Time Bandits. Let's review it.
Forget Time Bandits. Let's talk about. Okay, so okay.
But guys, speaking of Time Bandits,
he literally says the same thing cannot be in the same place at the same time. Then he throws the guy into the other guy, and they occupy the same space at the same time, and they explode. It makes no sense whatsoever. All right, I had to say it.
No, all right. That was my classic maker for Time Cop. No.
Yeah.
One more thing I liked though about I wanted to say for my likes was Geek Devotions. Geek Devotions is a collaboration of devoted geeks that are devoted to letting people know that they are loved. They produce a weekly geek culture-infused devotional, their podcast Com Talk, and written articles, all designed to encourage and challenge people in the geek community, bridging the gap between their faith and their geekdoms. Find all their content at geekdevotions.com.
That's great. I love Geek Devotions. But what does that have to do with
that was one of my favorite parts of Time Bandits too. Paul, you must have like taken a bathroom break at that part, but it was there. I remember it. I remember it.
Wondering.
So how it's related, Paul, is that Geek Devotions in their podcast, they have this thing called Glix that is similar to the Impossibility Drive in what's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So they can go anywhere, anytime, and in a blink of an eye, similar to in this, they can go to different spaces and times with the time map.
Glix have a time map?
You know what? How about some, speaking of time maps, how about some trivia related to Time Bandits?
Yes, let's do that.
All right. Hard segue
or
right
Time
there.
Cop if you have trivia on that.
Jean-Claude Van Damme can be seen doing the splits now. Okay.
How much was he paid to wear Wolverine brand shoes in the opening fight scene of Time Cop?
$2 and a Snickers bar.
Did you all realize regarding Time Bandits that most of the cast were Monty Python fans and wanted to work with Terry Gilliam? So that's a big reason why they did it.
That's how they got Shelley Duvall.
Yeah, that was so strange seeing her in this, by the way. My only other association with her, twice. My only other association with her is The Shining. So to go from that to this is very jarring.
That is quite a different role.
You never watched Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater?
I was about to say that too.
Is that's a thing? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it was a thing. It was a weird thing, but it was a thing.
All right. But my question to you guys is, what director would you love to get to work with if he or she called you up, not necessarily to act, I mean, maybe act, but to do some function that you're already skilled at. So it could be acting, it could be something else. Let's start with Chris.
Oh, man. I mean, if a director's like, I want to work with you, I'm with Paul. I'm kind of like, I'm not too picky, I'm not going to be like...
Oh, you're a first-time director?
If J.J. Abrams calls me up and he's like, I want you to be in my movie, I'd be like, I'm really holding out for Spielberg, So
I was just about to say, that's so funny because I was...
Appreciate it, JJ. But
JJ is usually my top pick, but if I had to meet any director, it would be Steven Spielberg.
Right, totally.
Yeah.
So it's really, at that point, it's really a question of like, who's your favorite director?
Fine, go with that then, guys.
And I'd probably have to just go with Spielberg just because of the breadth of his work and just the variety of his work is pretty impressive. He kind of broke them. He was kind of pegged as being like this comedy action adventure director for a while. And then he migrated into, no, I can do like serious, dramatic, award-winning films like Schindler's List and crap. And so, and crap.
Yeah. Well, and musical crap coming up too. and
literal crap, because I think he was involved with Indiana Jones 4.
I've never heard of this. There's an Indiana Jones 4? No, that can't be it. That's got to be a fan theory.
No, there's only 3.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Okay, so Steven Spielberg for Chris. Is that the same for you, Paul? That's what you said?
Yeah, I echo everything Chris just said. Okay. How about you, Francisco?
For me, I mean, yes, Steven Spielberg would be amazing. I was trying to think of someone else. I think Robert Zemeckis, because he did some good ones in the 80s and 90s, especially. His more recent stuff, I'm like,
I don't really like any of his CG stuff.
Yes.
I don't like any of his CG stuff.
You didn't like Beowulf?
Beowulf was weird.
Yeah, it's too uncanny valley for me, I think.
Well, they all are because it keeps pushing the envelope. I'm really looking forward to
the monster in stilettos was just weird. Like,
Angelina Jolie's character, is that who you're talking about?
Yeah.
He has a next one, a new one coming out that's all CG or something.
He's supposed to be working with who was he working with? Was it Spielberg?
I don't know.
On the Adventures of Tintin?
Well, Adventures of Tintin was Spielberg and Peter Jackson.
Oh, that wasn't. I thought they used Zemeckis in that, but I guess they didn't.
Maybe. I know the Zemeckis Cube was in Ready Player One with Spielberg directed.
Yeah, that was the best. That was his best role.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so that's your trivia.
What director would you not want to work with? Would probably be a better question. Like, what director, if they called you up, you'd be like, no,
Jonathan Peters?
I don't know.
Who's that one?
I don't know. I don't know if I hate anyone that much. I'm pretty down to sell my soul. So
all right. Yeah.
They're like, Chris, we want you to star in Showgirls 2.
Wow.
We're making a sequel. Oh my gosh. I'd be like, okay.
Who's
as a director, I don't hate. Somebody in the chat is saying Bryan Singer. That's a good call out.
Yeah, I was thinking
in terms of like as a director, he wasn't bad, but as a person, yeah. There's a few like that.
Like I've heard. Oh, you know what? I'm going to change my answer. I'm going to say John Carpenter. I think I would like to work on and be in a John Carpenter film or be attached to it in some way because he's a director I really enjoy his filmmaking. But someone who I wouldn't want to be is Bryan Singer came to mind. But as much as I love his movies, I think James Cameron I've heard is really hard to work with. So that would probably be more of a pain than it would be a joy. So.
With James Cameron, I'd just be like, you know what? Just
suck it up.
Draw me like one of your French girls. I'm down.
I'd be the same way. I'm like,
James, by the way, if you ever listen to this, feel free to call me up. Don't take this as my refusal. At least give me an offer.
All right, I'll give you an out. Great trivia, Francisco. And I have the answer to our last audience question, which again was, what U.S. president would you like to have seen act in a movie?
Oh, yeah.
So Ken Cummings answered this by saying, it would be awesome to see George Washington in a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
Father of our country romancing. You know, I was thinking I would like to
funny.
see George Washington in a movie just to see what he looked like back then.
Sure.
So,
Well, you see him in the paintings. I'm sure he looked exactly like that.
sure. Hello, $1 bill. You must be exactly like him. Yeah. All right. But are you ready for this episode's listener question?
Yes. What is it?
All right. Here it is. If you could go back in time, what artifact, painting, relic, etc. would you want to take? Let's say you can pay for it, though. You don't have to steal it.
Mm-hmm. So what would it be? Send your answers to trivia@retrorewindpodcast.com by the time we record our next episode, which gives you usually a week and a couple days if you listen to this on the day it releases. But now that we have all had some trivial fun, let's find out what memories you, our awesome rewinders, had about Time Bandits. Dustin Warford says, don't touch it. It's evil. Exactly.
Dallas Panda Marshall Mora says, I remember many a road trip watching this film.
Really?
Film. He says film. I don't know why I said film. But he continues, feel asleep. That's why I said film.
Oh, okay.
He says, feel asleep a few times, but enjoyed it all the more.
Okay.
I think he meant fell asleep.
Yeah. Matthew Cosby says, I grew up with this movie. Absolutely love it.
There you go. Some
right.
people liked
Yep.
it growing up. Ryan R. Jackson says, oh goodness, all I remember is a bunch of little people, a big face, and a lot of stupidity.
Let's see. David Gardner says they landed on a boat, the Titanic.
John Harju says, return the map. Return what you have taken.
Nathan James Norman says, I remember wanting to like it, but never being able to appreciate it.
Brian Minto says, all I remember is, Mom, Dad, it's evil. Don't touch it. Boom.
And Ricky Lambert says, never seen it. And maybe there's some good reasons not to ever see this film. Let's get into the things we didn't like about Time Bandits, spinning up our...
Was 3.
The top 3 things we didn't like. I'm going to kick us off this time. See, I beat you to it. Paul.
Oh, you beat me to it. How dare you, sir?
So this is very much a little quibble, but when they're in the medieval times, dinner and tournament, the medieval time period, they're walking along after they've stolen the stuff from Shelley Duvall and the other guy, the prince and the princess. How is it that they all get trapped in those foot traps things that pull you up into the tree?
Oh, that they walk in there? Yeah. Oh, each one has a trap for them singularly?
How would the bandits have the exact number of traps just ready for those guys?
There were more for other people that walked by. They didn't trigger them.
Were there?
Yeah, I saw the behind the scenes.
It was just like a bunch of
Yeah. Well,
traps.
that's what logic.
It was like a minefield of traps.
A minefield of rope traps. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Chris,
it's a fantasy movie.
What I guess would you say blew up for you about this movie in a explosive bad way?
The evil.
Well, see, I got to save that one for later.
Oh, okay.
But some parts were like a live action version of those, Monty Python. I love Monty Python.
Yeah.
Some parts felt kind of like a live action version of like those animation cutscenes from Monty Python.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah.
That kind of like just don't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't Terry Gilliam actually, was he the animator that did that? I'm trying to...
Well, he didn't do any animations in this, though, I think is what Chris is trying to say.
No, but what I mean, it would make sense if he did that.
And honestly, I love Monty Python, but those were kind of like my least favorite part of Monty Python. Like, they were sometimes good for a laugh, but mostly they just don't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of, like, there was, like the scene where, like, okay, they're on this ship, and then, like, there's this sneeze that, like, blows the ship away, so it's just a regular ship. But wait, no, it's not. The ship is a hat.
Yeah, I thought that was creative.
And
it is creative, but
it is just so like random and weird. And it was hard to like, I guess my problem was it was like hard to get a grasp of like what kind of movie this was.
Yeah.
Because it felt like the movie didn't really know. And I think that's probably a reflection of Terry Gilliam. Because looking back, as much as I love Monty Python, I'll quote Holy Grail every day for the rest of my life. Like in terms of like Terry Gilliam films, like I don't really like love any of them. Like the whole like Mr. Parnasium's one and
Adventure
Munchausen. Those I've never like found. Like I don't know what it is. I don't know what this movie is, and I don't know what to do with it. And I feel like that was true of Time Bandits.
So it sounds like when Terry Gilliam is directing a movie that's an actual like narrative story, then he's not able to do it. But when he's directing a bunch of skits that don't make a lot of sense with each other, that he calls a movie, then you like it.
Well, did you ever see 12 Monkeys?
Actually, no. And I have heard lots of people say that's a good one.
Yeah.
So I haven't actually watched that one.
I've seen 12 Monkeys.
But this is not one of them.
I don't really care for it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Did he direct 12 Monkeys?
Yeah.
Oh. I wonder why I didn't like it. All right.
No, but Monty Python is different because you know what Monty Python is. It's just ridiculous all the way through. It's not supposed to be like this really compelling narrative. It's more like Holy Grail. Like Flying Circus, for example, is obviously it's just sketch comedy. Like you don't go to Saturday Night Live and come away from that like, what was the overarching like story they were telling through all these random sketches?
I would like to see
Monty Python
Circus,
and the Holy Grail was a lot of just kind of that, but set within a story that the story isn't what draws you. You're not going there for, are they going to find the Holy Grail?
Yeah,
where's this journey going to take them?
It's in the title.
Good.
No.
Let's review Monty Python and the Time Cop.
No. From the opening credits, you should know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
Like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, you know what you're getting into from the opening credits.
I didn't.
You know,
the
talk about llamas and like firing the people who were responsible for firing the people responsible for the llamas in the opening credits of Holy Grail.
You're right.
It's fantastic. And it sets the tone for the rest of the movie. And the whole like, let's not bicker and argue about who killed who and just like all this random, like you if you understand Holy Grail correctly, you understand it's just an excuse to be ridiculous. But Terry Gilliam's other movies are pretending to tell an actual story and actually trying to tell a story, but he can't figure out what he's doing, and it's not consistent.
Yeah, it's almost like he feel. This I would agree with you, Chris. And it sounds like another way to put that is it's almost like he's leaning on non sequiturs to get him to the next stage because he doesn't know how to transition from one scene to another necessarily.
Well, that's why he has that map and the holes that they go through. So to transition.
Those represent the holes in the story.
Yes. I see. Gotcha. Well, let's go to Paul next. What's something you didn't like about this film? Or Monty Python and the Holy Grail. We could go, if you don't want to do dislikes of that, I'm totally fine.
What I didn't understand is why Jean-Claude Van Damme was... Oh, wait.
Holy Grail was a perfect work of cinema, okay? It was perfection.
How do I
for what it was?
kick Chris off this podcast?
Here we go. Oh, wait. We need to finish the rest. Oh, wait. Bring him back in.
Okay. You can go back. Okay.
All right. One of the things that I struggled with as a kid that unfortunately I struggled the same way as an adult is like, okay, I want to go on a ride with this film, so I associate myself with the kid. And honestly, after watching it, I don't want to be hijacked by these time bandits, for lack of a better word, go through all these crazy, kind of horrific, like trying to escape with your life kind of scenarios, and then at the end to have my parents blow up and my house set on fire. Like it does not leave me wanting to be in this world. I don't relate in a way like to this journey.
Yeah.
I think it's very creative, but it doesn't make me want to join in on it.
Yeah, that
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
that was I didn't make my top 3, but yeah, one of them was that I really just wish Kevin was able to stay with King Agamemnon.
Yeah.
Areopagus. King Agamemnon, who's Sean Connery's character. But yeah, and
I was going to say James Bond. Yeah.
Anyway, but something else I didn't like that did make my top 3 dislikes were, and this is something I'm not sure if it's Terry Gilliam or if it's British or like late 70s, early 80s filmmaking in general. I don't think that's the case because you don't see this type of cinematography in things like Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark or things like that. But I just, for whatever reason, and maybe it's just a certain style that I don't like, but the way this movie was shot, the way Monty Python is shot, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, that's the only Monty Python I've seen. Other movies in this time period that I recall having seen, I just don't like how they're shot. The shot composition seems really wonky or very standard or just cliche. And I'm not a cinematographer, so I don't know all the ins and outs of what makes it, but it doesn't look polished. Like we were talking to Spielberg as the director we would like to work with if he phone us up. Yeah. And I can think of so many shots of his that just look so beautiful. Like you'd want a painting of it up on your wall. They're just so done well. They're lit so well. And I can't think of a one in this that's like
Spielberg charges millions for that kind of output, unlike the production of these films that you're used to.
All right.
So
okay.
Peter Bigiu, or however you pronounce his last name, that's your dislike, the cinematographer.
I guess. I mean, I think it's a combination of him and Terry Gilliam saying up what the shots are going to be. But yeah, it's just
Yeah, I mean, the director is definitely the primary, like in terms of if he wants a good cinematographer or if he's got a vision, he should be,
exactly
telling the cinematographer what to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Get in line.
Okay.
So that's
make it more like Spielberg. Come on.
Exactly. Let's Senor Spielbergo this thing up. Chris, let's go back to you. What's something else you didn't like?
So kind of along the same lines in terms of like not being able to nail down what it was. Just in terms of the interest level in the show, I felt like, there's a lot of like kind of magical random stuff going on. But the story just kind of wasn't interested enough, or like Paul said, like it wasn't like you don't want to go along for the journey. Mm-hmm. Like you don't identify with any of the characters. And even if you identify with the boy, it's like, there's no like, all right, this is our trajectory. We know where we're heading. Mm-hmm. This is the end that we're reaching for. And then, okay, this is the happy ending we're looking for. There wasn't really any of that.
There's no one-eyed Willie with the treasure to find.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't like, and you can be very forgiving of that if it's nonstop laughs.
Yes,
Like again, Monty Python to me is nonstop laughs. It's just ridiculous throughout.
Or Airplane or something like that. Yeah.
I know Francisco, and there's a lot of rebellious people in Monty Python, and that's really hard for you.
It's rebellious children mainly, but yeah.
These are grown-ups that never grew up, so there's just older rebellious children.
In Monty Python, it's the rebellious peasants, isn't it? It's did you see that? Did you see him repressing me? We are in a tournament. Okay, anyways.
Just let the rabbit eat them all. Okay, continue, Chris.
Yeah. So it wasn't funny enough to make up for the lack of story.
Totally.
Like I can totally forgive lack of story if you're entertaining me in another way the whole time. If it's hilarious the whole time, I'm down. And it had a couple funny parts, but those were more just like sprinkled in, like, oh, John Cleese's Robin Hood is hilarious. But then like Agamemnon, like it wasn't funny. It was just like, it was kind of interesting. Like, and it kind of gets your hopes up that he'll hang out with him, but then he's stolen away.
But hey, he's a fireman later, so it might work out.
Yeah, and he ditches the kid. That's cool.
Great.
So, and it was just like, and sometimes instead of humor, it was like absurdity was a substitute for substance and humor throughout it in a lot of parts.
Oh yeah,
like where evil genius like starts spinning the cowboys around.
Yeah.
And then like out of the top of his head comes this weird, like the carnival music starts playing. And it just comes out and like starts slicing, and it was so weird.
Yeah.
Or the scene where like the pirate ship hat giant comes out, and like there's a lot of focus on this random cottage where there's like some weird, like I don't know what they were, puppets or creatures kind of bickering.
Either. Yeah.
And they spent a lot of time like showing them bickering in that cottage before the giant stepped on it. And it was like, it wasn't funny. It was just like weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So random. I don't know.
I can totally get behind that, Chris. There was a lot that was just, if this felt like he was trying to be an adventure with some comedic bits, but that is too random for the adventure to be really fulfilling. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Paul, what's one more just like you have before we get to our tragic makers?
This is more of a logical thing that took me out, and it's more of a plot hole. Is they get this mind control suggestion that they go after the greatest object in all the world.
Yeah.
And then later we cut to Randall, the leader / not leader, but really the leader of the little people. He all of a sudden is telling Kevin, no, it does exist. We have to go after it. And it's, in this place on the map that's in the middle of nowhere. It's like, all right, everyone was against this. Talk about like there's no ending or no goal. All of a sudden there is a switch of, oh, no, wait, there is, and we're going to go after it and we need your help. And like, where did that switch come from out of nowhere? And it was too much of a jump or a plot hole or something that did not make logical sense for this fantasy adventure to all of a sudden do almost a 180, because they were against it when the suggestion came out, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, it doesn't. Well, how do you know it exists? And why are you going to abandon your greatest quest to steal for treasure? I mean, if you've ever gone throughout time, that's not the greatest way to get rich. You want all the money coming to you. You don't go after all the money.
You get Gray Sports Almanac if you want to get rich.
Yeah. You tell him, Biff.
All right, that's very fair. So let's get to our tragic makers, guys. The things we hate most about Time Bandits. Let's start with Chris.
All right. So the ending is that's my tragic maker. The ending was just you've gone through this whole journey, and then at the very end, like he gets back home and his parents explode.
Yep.
And then you see like King Agamemnon like putting out the fires and whatever. And there's like maybe this glimmer of hope, like, oh, maybe they'll like somehow like reconnect, and like
exactly.
This random fireman will adopt this child or something.
Yeah.
But he's just like, nope, I'm hopping in my fire truck and heading away.
Yeah, peace
out, and I'm gone. And then freaking Kevin is just chilling there with. He's like, oh great, you got like some Polaroids of your great adventure. Now off to the orphanage for you, kid, because. Like,
social services isn't there to help him either. So I don't know.
It just seems so existential. Like, there's no point. Or it's just all meaningless.
It's all nihilistic. Yeah,
nihilistic. That's probably a better way to put that. Yeah.
And it was just like you just went through this whole weird journey, and then the end, like, doesn't. And again, to compare it to Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Yeah. Which is a perfect work of film.
Cinematic history.
Hilarious the whole way through, and the ending is hilarious because you've realized by this point that everything is just ridiculous. So of course they're gonna randomly like arrest everybody at the end.
Yeah,
and,
of course. That
spoilers.
Makes sense.
And then it's roll credits. That totally works for Monty Python, because it's consistently ridiculous and hilarious the whole way through.
Yeah.
But you can't have an ending like that for Time Bandits, because like it's supposed to it feels like it's at least trying to tell some kind of story.
Right.
As disconnected and inconsistent as it is. And then the ending is just like, now we gave up.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Chris. Paul, was that what made your Tragic Maker, the ending, or some other component of Time Bandits?
You'd think, but I'm going to go in a different direction with
the beginning. You hate how it started.
No, even weirder.
The middle.
So, and this
Monty
is for me
Python and the Holy Grail. You hated that movie, and it influenced your hatred of this.
I hated is when Jean-Claude Van Damme showed up in the middle of a Monty Python movie and started.
It was weird. Yeah.
No, again, this is for me personally. I don't expect many people to have this same thing. It's kind of like when rebellious children just ruin an entire movie for you.
Okay, fair.
For me, I know this is fantasy, but when you deal with characters like who are essentially God and Satan, I had a similar problem with the movie Legend, where they deal with these iconic characters who are real, very real to me, but when in a fantasy movie they are called that, but they do not have the same attributes.
Oh,
it really bothers me.
What attributes did you want them to have?
Well, for example, every character in this film is inept in some way. It's very flawed.
Oh, okay.
Even including God himself.
Yeah.
And even if he had help creating the universe, like getting these little guys to help him create, his creation is also inept in what they do. Every little thing is, and that just grinds me the wrong way.
Gotcha.
So there's a line in there where Randall's explaining, you see, to be quite frank, Kevin, the fabric of the universe is far from perfect. It was a bit of a botched job, you see. We only had 7 days to make it. So, that kind of thing is like, look, I understand it's fantasy, but for me, you're touching, you're touching on truths that people have that really wrestle with these truths. And so when you put it in a comedic fantasy and you turn it on its head in a negative way, it bothers me personally.
Gotcha.
And so
I feel like it would have been fine if they'd had a drawing of Muhammad included to balance it out. No, I'm kidding.
There you go.
Sorry.
Shiva also in the back. Yeah.
So it's hard for me to sit through those kind of movies and not be bothered by it.
Okay.
I would say.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say I would say like the actual like creation part of it isn't as bothersome as much as like the characterization of God.
Right.
In the end when you finally meet him and he's
or even when he's chasing him, like bring back what you have stolen. Well, if he's God, he's all powerful. He can send him back if he wanted.
Yeah. Well, maybe he wants them to make the choice, though, Paul.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. He just seemed kind of like callous and uncaring, and just kind of.
I can see that.
Just kind of like not an overly positive characterization of God's personality.
Yeah, much more like the type of God. I forget if it's called deism, where it's like God just made the universe and then left, and now it's just like running on its own. But for whatever reason, the portrayal of Satan and God in this didn't rub me the wrong way. But I can appreciate how that would for you, Paul. I totally get that.
You don't go to Time Bandits for your theology, Francisco?
Not
you
usually.
Don't okay.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. The thing that rubbed me the wrong way the most in Time Bandits was just Randall and the Time Bandits. I mean, they were certainly interesting characters, but none of them were likable. Not a one of them was interesting. The guy who ate a bunch of stuff was that was a fun little quirk that made him different. But everything else, all of them, I got a little sad whenever their hull would get taken away, whether it's from Robin Hood or it gets all off the boat or what have you. And I'm like, well, so essentially your last trip was wasted. Great. But I didn't like them and I wasn't really rooting for them that much. So it's hard when you have an ensemble like this and you don't care about any of the ensemble cast. So
were you rooting for Bilbo Baggins as Napoleon there?
I did like seeing Ian Holm. That was fun. But I didn't. I guess I don't know enough about Napoleon. Maybe if I knew more, I'd get the comedy
Watch
more.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
I've seen
Bill
and Ted.
That's all you need to
Excellent.
know about Napoleon.
Oh my gosh.
You don't have to know a lot about Napoleon. You just have to know that he's
short
stereotyped as having short man syndrome. He apparently wasn't that short compared to average, but people like to just characterize him that way. So there you
gotcha.
go. That was the joke.
Got it. Okay. Well, fair enough. But it didn't make me laugh. So tragic maker. But now that we've entered all our trajectories into the firing computer, Alice, you have a firing solution for us.
Firing solution complete. Rating salvo at the ready. On your mark.
Alrighty, it's time for the moment of truth. Do we rate Time Bandits? A classic. We'd recommend anyone go see this film, whether or not they've seen it before. A nostalgic, if you have fond memories of it, it's definitely worth your time to revisit it and relive those memories. But if you've never seen it, probably just go watch something else. Time Cop, maybe.
Maybe not.
Or
maybe
do we
not.
rate it a tragic? It's not worth anyone's time. If you've never seen it, keep it that way. And if you have fond memories of it, don't rewatch it now because you'll likely sully those fond memories. Let's start with our guest. Chris, what is your final rating for Time Bandits?
All right, so I have a technical question before I answer. So is the nostalgic rating like from my perspective, or like more like potentially like if someone else enjoyed it as a child?
I'm struggling with that myself, let's be honest.
I typically say it's from your own perspective. If you would like to generalize, you're more than welcome to, but I'm fine with it just being your perspective. You're the guest, you get to have that.
Because to me, I'm like, I was a teenager when I saw it. It had already been out for a long time, so I have no nostalgic attachment to it other than giving my friend a hard time for suggesting it in the first place. But I could see how someone might have, some fond memories of like, oh, this was a ridiculous movie. I didn't even know what was going on as a kid, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
right. And could appreciate the nostalgia of it that way.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't have that, so I would tend towards Tragic Maker, which I think...
A tragic, yeah.
Tragic rating, which I think this would be like my first time actually rating something tragic on this show. So
seriously.
Could be. I could look at that.
I rated other things tragic, but it was a joke.
Yeah, I think I have to go with Tragic on this.
All right. Tragic from Chris Cowan. Send your hate mail to Nate Henderson at stayandbrave.com. Let's see. Okay, so Tragic from Chris. Paul, what was your final rating? So
man.
Chris, your prediction was tragic. You ended up being tragic. Paul, your prediction was also tragic. Did it end up being so?
So prior to starting the recording of this episode, I have been teetering between tragic and nostalgic myself.
Oh, really?
Even up to this point, like what is my final? And I would not watch this movie again unless it was for, one of these review shows kind of a thing. But I understand, like what Chris said, if people enjoyed it in the past, I think they would enjoy it again in the future. And I wouldn't mind watching it again if it was, for something. But overall, as a movie as a whole, I don't like it that much. So I think I'm going to go the way of tragic as well.
All right. 2 tragics. And by the way, Chris...
Like if it was a choice between seeing the movie again and like having to slip my wrist, I'd see the movie again.
You're right.
But like, it wouldn't be my first choice.
Yeah.
All right. Fair. Wow. Also, point of order, Chris, you actually did rate Young Guns a tragic. So this is not your first tragic.
Okay.
Yes, you did.
Okay. All right.
All right. So for me, I predicted nostalgic, again, having never seen this. And I think my that prediction is going to stand. I could see, I don't know if I necessarily would watch this again, but I found enough of it enjoyable. that I would like. I could see myself watching it if my kids, for whatever reason, wanted to see it again. I could be like, all right, I guess I could watch that. It's certainly not my favorite. I like you guys. I don't have a lot of nostalgia for it. But it wasn't so off-putting to me in any way. However, I do worry that if I were to watch it again, I could very easily fall asleep to it or get bored by it. That I feel like there's a lot of potential there. So it's lucky this is my first time. Otherwise, it could have been very much a tragic for me.
Yeah.
Keep waiting for Jean-Claude Van Damme to show up.
All right, guys. Well, according to the Retro Rewind podcast with Too Tragic and Nostalgic, we rate Time Bandits a disputed tragic film. Probably don't go see this, whether or not you've seen it before. But now it's time to get back to our own time. Good old 20XX.
20XX?
Comsat online. Receiving incoming transmission.
Oh, it feels good in the neighborhood to be back. But we wouldn't have been able to travel back to 1981 to begin with if it weren't for our amazing reflux capacitors. We don't need a time map. We need reflux capacitors. Namely, Jared Holzhauer, Deborah Powers, Brian Keating, Patrick Hicks, LJ Lowry, Chris Cowan. Oh, you're right here. Chris Owens, Geek Devotions, The Untold Podcast, James Kennison, Drew of the Cellcast, Ashley Cronenbitter, Pastor Dewson, Kennethan, Redeemed Otaku, Ryan Lingle, That's Our Bobo, Josh Adams, D. Tungsten, Andy Lewis, Jeff, Lil Ronan, The Dapper Man Reviews, and Tony from the Retro Days, in addition to 8 other awesome patrons as well. Thank you all so much for keeping the gigawatts coming. And if you want to keep us flying for as little as $1 a month and get bonus content for your generosity, head over to retrorewindpodcast.com/support to help us grow via Patreon, Subscribestar, or PayPal.
This stream is sponsored by PaulJPowers.com.
And while we're thanking our supporters, we also want to give a big, or should I say, little pirated hug to Chris Cowan for supporting us with his thoughts about Time Bandits tonight. Mm-hmm. So, Chris, where can people find you online? And is there anything cool you got going on that people should know about?
Yes. You can find me at stunningandbrave.net, where I have a podcast with my good buddy Nate Henderson, who's also been on Retro Rewind several times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a comedy podcast where we kind of poke fun at pop culture and people being fools on social media, that kind of thing. You can also follow me on Instagram at Mad Cowan.
Very cool. Thank you again so much, Chris. It's always fun having you on the show. So glad you're able to come back for Time Bandits.
Yeah.
And a hearty thanks to those of you, yes, you listening right now for the first time, and of course, all of you who are a part of our Rad Rewinder community. You all who watch us live every week, whether we're recording this podcast or playing retro games, are an amazing group of people helping sustain the pod. But if you are looking for ways to get involved in growing this Retro Rewind endeavor, reach out to us on social media where we are at Retro Rewind Pod, pretty much everywhere. You could buy some of our merch, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser, become a monthly patron, or simply just share your favorite episode of the podcast with a friend. Like, do you like it when podcast hosts are talking about one movie, then keep talking about another movie? Well, then maybe you
like
should
Monty
share
Python?
This Time
and the Holy Grail?
Never mind, scratch that. But whatever your favorite episode is, share that with a friend so that more people can enjoy the content of the Retro Rewind Pod.
Nah. You've been listening to the Retro Rewind Podcast.com/231. Our review of Time Bandits with me as your XO, PaulJPowers.com. You can find me online and all my social media at PaulJPowers.com. Not .net like stunningandbrave.net. It's .com, PaulJPowers.com.
.com. That's spelled C-O-M.
We can't all be millionaires just dropping loads of cash on the .com domain.
Yeah, Paul. Well, you gotta be a millionaire.
I understand. Look, I understand the .coms are more expensive, but the stunningandbrave.com was a little more expensive than the PaulJPowers.com, just to be honest. So.
Probably. Anyway, thank you for being an amazing friend, Paul, amazing bandit. I mean, you're not really one, but and for another fun voyage. I have been and continue to be Captain of the Pod, Francisco Ruiz. Find me on Twitter at FXRetro_, especially if you need pixel art work commissioned.
Captain, we are on final approach to base as we go through this time map.
Thank you, XO, and thank you all for listening. We pray you are more joyful now than when you first hit play, but like a Pokemon, we gotta catch you all for Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, our next episode of the Retro Rewind Podcast.
Retro Rewind mission complete. Proceed to nav point Omega and return to base.